Joining us for a bit is Caddo Parish Juvenile Court Judge Paul Young. Judge Paul, welcome to Keel. How are you this morning?
Thank you, Robert. I'm doing fine. Hi, Aaron.
Good to talk to you this morning. I know this is the day 17-year-olds beginning today have to be locked up in juvenile facilities if they've committed violent crimes. Is that accurate?
No.
Okay. Fix it.
The non-violent offenders come in first.
Right. Okay.
Effective today, non-violent offenders arrested by Caddo Parish Sheriff or Shreveport Police will be brought to the detention center. And then effective July 1st of 2020, they are the violent offenders are brought in also.
Okay, I had that mixed up.
Basically, what happens today, and you can give me numbers if you have them. So today, a bunch of 17-year-olds get moved from where they're the youngest guys over to...
They don't. They don't. The ones that are already arrested as of yesterday stay in the adult system. The law is in effect today. Any child alleged to have committed an offense and arrested as of today comes to the juvenile detention center.
Okay.
So it's a gradual buildup of 17-year-olds in our detention center.
That's what I wanted to clarify. So the 17-year-olds currently incarcerated stay where they are, and starting today, the ones arrested, they go to the juvenile center.
Right.
Gotcha.
And I wanted to correct one other misconception. I agree with this reform. I agree with the legislature's policy that they've enacted into law to treat 17-year-olds like 16-year-olds. That's what it is. And the court's job is to enforce that policy. And I'm going to enforce that, which in fact, in part means I will not allow 17-year-olds to be thrown into now vacant adult jail somewhere and slap a sign on the outside calling it a juvenile detention center and consider that we've enforced the reform law. We're going to have to treat 17-year-olds like the rest of the juvenile population in our juvenile detention center.
So you agree with the legislation, but the problem is, finish my sentence.
Caddo Parish is not prepared for it because we have the smallest juvenile detention center in the South. We have been functioning with a 24-bed facility, running at capacity most of the time, when sister cities like Little Rock and Jackson and others have double the size detention center that we have. Now, we've been able to do that because we have an excellent juvenile justice system. Comprehensive. We got a lot of services, a lot of different programs that help decrease the number of kids we have to put in detention. But we run at capacity. With the addition of 17-year-olds, the math doesn't work anymore, and we have to expand the detention center.
Okay, Paul, I'm sorry I call you Paul. Judge Young, 5 youngsters come in that are 17 today, and if you're at capacity, I don't know what your number is today, you have to let 5 go. How are you and your fellow judges going to make those decisions? How tough is that?
Yesterday, I released 3 that I would have kept otherwise in preparation for 17-year-olds coming in this weekend, expecting, a couple at least. So I had to release 3 that I had in detention center. They were on probation. They weren't behaving right on probation. I felt they needed a sanction, put them in detention for a few days. I had to release them early because we got to make room. Now, will that have an immediate impact? I don't know.
Judge Paul, just to clarify, what you're telling us, what you're telling everybody is that in Caddo Parish, juvenile judges, yourself and others, will be releasing, because of a lack of space, guys who otherwise should be in jail?
And we've been doing that for years. Occasionally, when we'd get over capacity, we'd have to release some kids. But now it's just going to be a standard practice that we will run at capacity and we'll be having to release kids that we otherwise would feel we have to keep in detention because we simply don't have the space. The reason we have the addition of the 17-year-olds in our jurisdiction.
Judge, what's the bar on that? I.e., if you have some 17-year-olds coming in, it may not be for an offense that is as serious as some others that you already have in detention.
Sure, absolutely. I'll release a 17-year-old on a misdemeanor or even maybe a vehicular burglary because I have to keep a 15-year-old who's charged with armed robbery or maybe even a more serious offense. We have some very serious offenders in our juvenile detention center right now and have for several months. So we constantly have to make those decisions. We actually get telephone calls at night when the police bring them into the detention center, and we hear the report, and we make a determination based on the information we get from detention about their legal history and their family situation as we can tell it, the nature of the offense they're charged with, and then we make a decision whether to keep them or not. We will now have even more pressure to release them because we're running at capacity all the time.
Paul, we had a great tour of your facility a month or so ago.
Right.
Explain why you can't just put some more bunks in there and, and double bunk them or do some things like that.
Sure. There are other laws regarding juvenile detention standards. And again, I agree with that reform. There are some places in this state and other parts of the country that are just hellholes that kids are put in. And we all have seen pictures of that over time. Our detention center meets all the juvenile detention standards. It is an excellent facility. It's run by excellent people with staff that are well trained to deal with kids, because you deal with kids differently than you do hardened adults, and all the services that you have to have for kids. So it is an excellent facility. I say it's the best in the state by far.
Judge,
and we're going to have to.
At the end of the day, what we're talking here, is money to expand the facility.
Right.
First thing popped into my head is Caddo Parish Commission sitting on $150 million, right?
Right. In fact, Robert and Aaron, everybody agrees. All the commissioners have agreed. The $12 million that the architect says is needed to expand our detention center, adding 3 pods of 8 beds each. The commission has that money. All it takes is a majority vote of the commission to turn ground on that expanded detention center. $12 million. It's sitting in the bank. It can't be used for anything other than capital projects, and it's available for this. They could start tomorrow. The second step would have to be scrubbing the budget for what we anticipate would be the cost of operating expenses. We've started at $4 million. We've kind of gotten it down close to $3 million. I think we can get it even lower. But we scrub that budget. The third step, I suggest, since the commission thinks the public won't support a new tax, an increase of the millage that's currently paid, is to appoint a committee of citizens to study the commission budget, the legal restrictions on the use of that budget, and if they report back to the citizens of this parish that the money, in fact, $2+ million a year for operating expenses, is in fact available, then that's the end of the matter. They vote for it and they pass it. If they conclude it is not available because of legal restrictions and other reasons, then the only option is to put before the voters the option of increasing the current 1957 millage, a little less than doubling it, to bring in the $2+ million that would be needed to operate it. And if the people vote for it, great. And if they vote against it, well, we just have to continue to release kids that we think need to be kept in detention.